we've got a clock. Now we just gotta wait for the thing to catch up over here. Okay. That's cool. Alright. And I think everything is good. And yep, we're working. Alright. Good morning. It is sunny but freezing here. And by freezing, I mean just actually a couple degrees below freezing, but it's sunny and clear. I did a live show yesterday for the monthly live show for the Uncle Adam's Irregulars, the Patreon supporters at the Uncle Adam's Irregulars level. And during that show, it was cloudy and windy, then it snowed, and then by the end of the show, it was nice and sunny outside. So right now, we've got no snow, thankfully. And I hope everybody's doing well. Space Iguana says, hello from America's Mitten. I'm assuming you're talking about Michigan, Lower Michigan. We've got Tampa, we've got Madrid, Germany, Belgium, Kobe, Japan, France/Spain. I'm not sure what that's all about. You're like maybe right on the border. Pennsylvania. What else have we got? Jay Tick says, how about that October snow yesterday? Jay Tick is also in Wisconsin. Yes, it was a hoot. Luckily, none of it stuck, so I'm glad for that. Brooklyn, New York, New Brunswick, Canada, Surrey, England. We've got freezing here, too, south of the Cheddar Curtain. That's probably Illinois, I'm going to say. Rainy Sweden, Seattle here. First live show. Well, congrats, and thanks for coming. We've got Florida, we've got Cyprus, Southampton, UK, Ireland, San Diego, New York City, Waterford, Ireland, Georgia, California, Southern Arizona, the Midlands of the UK, Bahrain, Singapore, Switzerland. We got Uperland, which, for those of you who are not around here, that's the upper peninsula of Michigan. Greece. Schaumburg, which is where Adepticon is. I'll be in Schaumburg in March. Minnesota, Connecticut, Melbourne, Australia, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, which I think is actually Cincinnati, Isle of Wight, Bulgaria, Hong Kong, Nottingham, Holland, Australia, and let's see, Scotland, Vienna, Austin, Jersey. That's how it's spelled. I'm assuming we're talking about New Jersey. Columbus, Ohio. I was just there for Origins back in June, July, whatever the hell that was. Clearwater, Florida. Blood Bowl Build Day. That's hard to say almost. Texas, North Dakota, the Netherlands, and Melbourne, Switzerland, all kinds of places. Thailand. It snowed a few days ago here in Kansas. My wife is, she went on a women's weekend with some friends, and they're up north of here, maybe only about a couple hours drive, but they had snow. She told me they had snow before we had snow, and then the snow moved down to Milwaukee. But again, I don't know if it's stuck up in where she is. I'll have to ask her when she gets home, but we got nothing on the ground here. So nothing on the ground means nothing to shovel. That's the way that works. Dave Holt has a question. Hey, Uncle Adam, what do you think of Games Workshop doing one-day-only exclusive models? Pretty disappointed myself. Has no chance to get one, as was at work all day, and it's just an in-store order. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't get one either because it's like 100 miles to the closest Games Workshop, well, almost 100 miles, to the closest Games Workshop from where I live. And I originally thought that maybe it was also going to be a one-day order where you could order from the website, but as it turned out, that was not the case. So, I mean, it's their choice. It's a bit of a bummer, but to be fair, the model, like this, the Space Marine, the Primaris Space Marine, like Lieutenant that they were doing, is a cool sculpt, but to be fair, they've also made like 58 different Lieutenants now at this point. So, you know, if it was like a really super cool something that we haven't seen a lot of, that would maybe be a little bit more of a sting. But for me, I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to get it because there's no Games Workshop anywhere near me. Because I'm not going to drive 90 to 100 miles one way and then have to come back again to buy like one dude. Kind of leads into today's subject, honestly, which we'll get to in a bit. But I just kind of was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to get one then. It's that attitude a little bit where you're just like, well, if I can't, I can't, and that's okay. So, would love to have gotten one to some degree, but yeah. Anyway, that's where that's at. TJ Menzies says, indeed, I met you at Origins and took an awkward photo with you. Good times. Always glad to talk to people at conventions and do photos and all kinds of stuff like that. It's always, frankly, surprising to me a little bit, you know, because I'm just this guy, you know. And yeah, it's always nice to see people and talk to people and do selfies and things like that with people at conventions. I appreciate it. Brian Griffith says, my local gaming shop has started doing Kill Team every 4th Saturday, so I set myself a challenge to get one built. Oh, shoot. It's already going pretty quick. To get one built and painted over a month. Still have to remind them to get on Game 4. Yeah, remind them to get on Game 4. That's a good idea. Things have been growing, and so we've been adding new features, and we're adding several new features coming soon that I can't really talk about right now. So yeah, I think, you know, depending on the army that you do for Kill Team, like a month to get, unless you paint really super crazy slow, which a lot of people do, don't get me wrong, I used to as well. You should be able to pull that off, I would think, and that's a good goal to set for yourself, and that's cool, definitely. What else have we got? Torch says, I happen to get a 25th anniversary model still in the box. That sometimes happens too, especially with the kind of limited ones. Is the 25th anniversary one the beaky, kind of like Crimson Fist, kind of gunned down shaped one? Because if it is, I picked one of those up actually at Adepticon in the Bits Bazaar for like $20 maybe. It wasn't like super, you know, a big deal. But I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm going to use him for, but I want to use him for something because he's kind of cool. I've always had a soft spot for the beakies. Honestly, I wish that there were beaky Primaris. I know that doesn't make any sense. I know that doesn't, you know, but I kind of wish that there were. So, JTX says, next time let me know if you want some exclusive figure and I'll grab it from the local GW. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was not that big of a deal. George says, so I picked up the core book for Kill Team yesterday, trying to decide factions for my girlfriend and I. Any recommendations? Well, I mean, it depends on what you've got available. If you want, like, if you've already got some models and stuff. Like, my first Kill Team was Chaos because they were already done and painted in my Chaos 40K army. So that helps a bunch. You know, I've done a video a long time ago about, like, which army should you pick. And generally, my opinion is pick which army you think looks coolest. Like, if you and your girlfriend want to play really competitively, either against each other, which, you know, I guess is a thing, or against other people or whatever, then I would probably do some research online to see what's winning a lot. I hear Death Guard is pretty good. I have a Death Guard Kill Team. It's like 6 guys, no Poxwalkers, just Plague Marines. And I like them, you know, but I don't know that they're overpowered or anything like that. Different tournament people will always tell you their opinion about, like, what's overpowered, what's underpowered, you know, what's tier 1, what's, you know, mid-tier, that kind of stuff. But generally, as a hobby hero, I always tell you, you know, get the army that you think looks coolest, that you're going to enjoy. Because if you get an army that you don't enjoy aesthetically, or you don't enjoy building, or you don't even enjoy playing, but you get them because you think that they're, like, overpowered and that'll help you win games, I don't know that you're going to necessarily enjoy it as much. But your mileage may vary. John Woodford says, but to say something for Games Workshop, I had a sponson break off my Bal Predator, and GW is sending me a whole new tank. Oh, yeah. I mean, their customer service stuff. Like, I had, years ago, I had Plague Marines after they had switched to Finecast, and they were no longer metal, and I was missing... Oh, it wasn't... Like... My thought process was, well, if they're Finecast and there's like some bubbles or pits or weird, they're Plague Marines. That makes sense. They should be covered in bubbles and pits. So one extra one just means that it's pre-converted for me and it's custom. But like the plasma gun was not missing. I mean, the hand that would hold the plasma gun was there, and the back half of the plasma gun was there, but most of the front was just all one big bubble. And so I contacted them, and they sent me... I don't think they sent me the entire new box. They sent me, I think maybe like the little kind of weird sprue that it was part of. Because they're not sprues like the plastic sprues, like the old Finecast were like these small kind of weird round, not round, but like rounded corners kind of sprues. And so they just sent me one of those like in a padded envelope, and it was fine. And so, yeah, that was really nice. But it's, it's customer service. It's what you should do. So, yeah. According to Witless Fop, beakies are called womble helmets in the UK. That sounds like you're maybe pulling one on, trying to pull one over on me. But maybe not. What else? Paul Noxie says, if I play 3 more Kill Team games at my local GW, I get some of those black and orange Kill Team dice. Oh, well, that's pretty cool. That's a nice kind of like an incentive, to get you to play and to come into the shop and play. There's a lot of people who play like at home and stuff like that with their friends. I had a conversation actually yesterday at the shop about a guy who's like, I generally like to play at home because then I can drink beer with my friends, and I can't do that at the shop. There are some shops you're starting to see that actually, I think, maybe have a liquor license or something like that, or at least a beer license, and they maybe do some craft beers or whatever. But that's kind of more of a bigger city thing. Like here, we don't have that, so... But yeah, getting people to come into the shop makes a lot of sense because it helps you meet other people to play with and stuff like that. And if you keep playing, you probably keep buying. So it makes sense for everybody. J.E. Granberg says, I'm liking the GW Specialist games with a few minis as I can paint a wider variety of factions. I never have had the time to paint a full Orc, Skaven, Khorne army for Age of Sigmar. Yeah, that makes sense, totally. Yeah, I agree. Like, the smaller skirmish stuff is a big benefit for everybody. I've been cranking out lots of kill teams because they're all small, so I can kind of do that. Guy Beckett says, love your channel. It's been really helpful with my hobby and using your Game 4 app to get back into playing. Keep up the great topics. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Douglas Hooker says, kill team, yet to play, but have Death Guard bits painted and just need to point up. What do you feel is a good balanced starter Death Guard kill team list? Like I said, I went all Plague Marines. I've got, my leader has got the Power Fist, and he's got a Plague Sword, I think. And he's also got a plasma gun, because he's that model with the plasma guns on his back, I like him quite a bit, because he's real in between kind of killy. And then, I don't know, I just went with like a Blight Launcher, and I went with... There's another kind of specialist type dude, and the other guys are just regular, Plague Marines. I just like them. I like the Disgustingly Resilient. That's kind of spectacular. It saved my bacon, my gross, decaying Death Guard bacon, a couple of times, easy, in just the last couple of games, so definitely. VJ Morph is also saying that the Wombles are awesome. I have to look that one up to see if that's actually a thing, because I don't even know why a Womble. Like, where does that come from? That doesn't make any sense. No, the Beakies are known as Womble heads in the UK. That's what I'm being told. It's kind of crazy. Brian Cheney says, yep, my local shop near Seattle now sells 5 different bottled beers. It's pretty neat. I mean, I can understand how that can be a problem with... like it's a game shop and you've got kids in there, and it's not like they're going to drink beer, but they might be around someone who drinks too much beer or whatever the problem is, or I don't know. You'd have to figure out maybe there were certain times when you could sell beer, like there's a, movie theaters for a while started doing this thing where like after 7 o'clock they wouldn't let in kids under 21 because then they would sell beer, but the local volunteer movie theater, not-for-profit movie theater that I volunteer at here in town, we sell beer there in cans, and kids can come in, and it's fine. We just don't sell beer to kids. That's how that works. So yeah, it would be something interesting, because I think there are some people that would be a little bit more interested in coming into a shop sometimes if that's the current hurdle for them to do that. So there's that. Kelly says, morning, Adam. How many guys in your Imperial Guard 100-point list? That would be for kill team. maybe 12, I think. Where's my phone? I can look it up in Battlescribe. This will be super exciting. Or is that on my iPad? Shoot. Yeah, that's one thing I wish Battlescribe would do, is automatically sync between your different devices, but, you know. Astra Militarum. So I don't know if this is my... Yeah, so there's a Tempestor. There's 3 Specialists. So that's 4. Actually, it's maybe like 10. So it's Tempestor with a Bolt Pistol and a Power Fist. And then I have a Guardsman with comms, Voxcaster. And I've got a Scion Gunner with a Flamer. He's Demolitions. And then I've got the Meltagun Scion Gunner, and he's a Sniper, because it'll help with the Meltagun, I hope. And then I've got a Scion with a hot shot lasgun, another Scion with a hot shot lasgun, another Scion with a hot shot lasgun, and then I have 3 special weapons gunners for the regular guard, and it's a grenade launcher, and a flamer. So that's my current list, which seems to be 10. They're actually in the process of being painted. Like, I've done 5 regular guard. They're done. They just need to be, like, varnished. And I'm in the middle right now of painting all the Scions. They are on my paint table. I did not paint them yesterday because I was busy doing other stuff, but I will be painting them more today. They're probably halfway done. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that because, again, I've never run Imperial Guard. That's one of the reasons I'm loving Kill Team, is because I can run a bunch of stuff I've never run before, because I've never wanted to paint 200 of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Paul Bateman says the Wombles used to be a kids show. Oh, that makes a little bit more sense then. All right. J.E. Granberg says, if you were to predict the next GW Specialist game based on historical releases, what do you think would come out next, or is GW going to advance current releases? I think that they'll probably keep advancing some of the current releases. If I had to guess on what the next big game was going to be from them, I don't know, honestly. I would love to see something Mordheimish, but I don't know... I don't know how that would work, because if they wanted to basically do like a Kill Team version but for Age of Sigmar, they could pull that off using current Age of Sigmar type models, just come up with a you know, basically honestly make like a Kill Team box, but instead of like, you know, sci-fi gothic terrain, make it Age of Sigmar terrain, throw in some stuff that's already out there, you know, throw in some, I don't know, Chaos Warriors and some... I'm assuming Stormcast, or whatever the deal is, you know, throw those guys in there, throw in the book, boom, ship that, and then sell the book separately, kind of like they did with Kill Team. They could do something like that. I don't know that they would call it Mordheim. I'm not sure what they would call it. I think if they did that and called it Mordheim, there's a lot of people who really loved Mordheim who would be unhappy about it. I think that Mordheim, that ship may have sailed, especially since because of Frostgrave. Like, Frostgrave kind of out-Mordheimed Mordheim as far as, like, what's available these days and all that kind of stuff. And the changes they made to Frostgrave to make it different than Mordheim. I still personally believe that one of the biggest benefits to Frostgrave over Mordheim is that in Frostgrave, if you want to change up your army and or your warband, your group of treasure hunters, and you want to make them... You just want to swap like the wizard and the apprentice and go from necromancy to elementalism. You can do that, but you don't have to change all your henchmen. They are the same in all these armies, whereas in Mordheim, if you wanted to try out a different type of army, you have to start from scratch because the henchmen are all different. That also really it becomes problematic for balancing. I mean, there are certain armies in Mordheim that are just a lot better powered because the henchmen are even just better than the regular henchmen in the other, you know, armies. Whereas when the henchmen are now all equal in Frostgrave, it doesn't seem like you're playing an uphill battle as much sometimes, like you do frequently in Mordheim. So there's that too. So yeah, I don't know. You know, like if we look at like the 40K stuff and the sci-fi stuff in general, you had, you know, Shadow War Armageddon. People were interested in that. They're like, okay, cool, we'll bring out Necromunda. And Necromunda people were interested in that, but a lot of other people were like, well, but I kind of wanted more 3D terrain. And then Kill Team came out, and then here's where we are. If they were to make full-blown, like, just redo Mordheim, they would have to crank out a whole bunch of new models, which they did for Necromunda, admittedly. But they'd have to do that for all of the different factions and all that kind of stuff. And then, like, when it would launch, it would only have 2 factions, and then they would have to bring out more factions. It would take longer. It's a whole thing. I don't know how it would work. Yeah, I don't know. But that's where I could see them going. I mean, obviously at this point now they've kind of they've dipped their toe into Epic with Titanicus. They've even kind of, to some degree, dipped their toe a little bit into Gorka Morka now with the Speed Freaks. But, you know, I mean, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I don't know. I would like to see some sort of fantasy kill team. I don't know what you would call it, but I think that would be kind of cool. It would help. I think it would also, because, like, there's Age of Sigmar Skirmish, but, you know, it's okay. But I would like to see something a little bit more robust. So there's that. The kill team Age of Sigmar is called Warhammer Underworld. No, I would not say so, because Underworld, aka Shadespire, aka Night Vault, that's much more board gamey because it's played on a hex. There's really not technically any terrain. It's got, you know, the cards and there's combos and stuff. It's a very different game. So yeah, I would see something that would actually be a skirmish battle, but not Age of Sigmar Skirmish, because that's kind of lacking. Something a little bit more meaty. That would be, I would think, something to be interesting. Carlos says, it seems that your voice relaxes my parrot. He fell asleep. That's a compliment. Well, sweet dreams, Mr. or Mrs. Parrot. I don't think I've ever put a bird to sleep before. Maybe I have. I don't know. I was at work recently and a bird flew into the window and then probably was fine. Maybe not. It was hard. We were standing there, me and one of the other guys at work were looking at something on the screen and trying to figure out some code or something, and then all of a sudden it was just boing, and it hit the window, and then we saw this dark shape fall down. And I'm sure he was fine. He walked it off. Maybe not. Devin Jones says, if you just want to play Frostgrave, you can use D&D pre-painted minis, but it has the same benefits of X-Wing as a gateway game. Yeah, Frostgrave is a great game. It's I'm going to hopefully do some battle reports on it soon, because I have 2 very nicely painted armies, actually, because it was just one of those deals where I was like, I've got all this stuff to paint, and I'm just not getting to my Frostgrave stuff, so I worked with a commission painter and got some stuff painted, and they look really nice. Phew. Ooh. Excuse me. Yeah, so I would like to do that. I just kind of need to get all that stuff kind of rolling a little bit more. Speaking of rolling, I don't know why I would say that, but speaking of getting back into some stuff that I need to get done, Sam and I will be filming coming up in the beginning part of November, so you will see some new videos here on the channel from Sam, our friend painter Sam Lenz, painter, Tau salesman, metal aficionado. Yeah, and he'll be back here. Actually, right now he's down in the Chicago area at Dragonfall, which is a miniatures convention near Chicago, and he's down there teaching classes this weekend. So yeah, but he and I are filming, like I said, sometime in early, I think it's like the 3rd or something like that of November. We're going to film 2-3 episodes probably, and then you'll see those in later November, potentially early December. So Sam's coming back to the channel. But if you want more Sam, I would tell you to go follow him on Twitch. I believe it is Samson Arts on Twitch, but I believe he also said if you just go to the search bar and type in Sam Lenz, and that's Lenz with a Z on the end, then you'll find him. He broadcasts on Wednesdays and Thursdays, I believe, like around 2 o'clock afternoon Central Time over here. And he's very good, and he's been doing very well. He's always painting stuff and talking about the stuff he's painting and talking to people in the chat, and he's quite good. Tim J. Mills says Battlescribe will sync between platforms if you set it up to use Dropbox. Really? I saw that it worked with Dropbox, but I did not realize it would sync in between. I will have to look into that. Because I pay for Battlescribe. A lot of people, you know, because it's got ads if you don't, and I just like to generally pay for things that have ads if I can get the ads to go away. So that's kind of the trick. James C. says, how on earth do you stay on top of all of the games / armies, etc.? Well, you don't, really. You pick and choose. At least I do. You know, that's one of the reasons why I don't talk about, you know, on Friday's video, I mentioned how people will reach out to me from time to time and say, oh, you don't talk about this game, you don't talk about that game. And like I said, I'm not a news channel. I don't talk about all the new releases that are coming out. There's plenty of other people that do that already. I would tell you to follow those people if that's what you're interested in, or just do Google searches. That kind of really helps kind of take care of the situation for you right there. I generally talk about what I think is going to bring people into the hobby, and I also talk about stuff that I like. So that's pretty much about it. Definitely. Space Iguana says Tau for sale. Actually, I bought some Tau. It's in the basement. I bought one of those new commander boxes because it's got one of those Fireblade dudes. You know, he's kind of holding up the knife. He's holding up the ceremonial whatever blade. Yeah, I bought that box because I want to add him to my Tau list, which is it all built? I don't know if it's all built, but it's not textured and primed yet. But it's in the queue. And I want to add him to that because the other option is a ethereal, and I don't want to even touch ethereals. They're just, I don't know, the weird toga boys. I'm just not interested in that whole thing. So that guy with the big knife is pretty cool. But I swear I have that model somewhere already, because I was going to use him I wanted to convert him and make him look like he was tainted by chaos, because somebody had said to me, or I'd read someplace or whatever, that like Tau was the only civilization that didn't have the taint of chaos, or wasn't able to be tainted by chaos or whatever. And I was like, hold my beer, because with that guy, like, my plan was to basically remove that knife from his hand and replace it with like a big knife or something, like, because he's not holding the knife by the handle, he's like holding it kind of like by the scabbard, like this, you know, and so the knife is here. So I was going to remove the whole hand and replace it with a big scary knife, and then just, you know, paint him, but then cover him in blood, and then he would be a chaos tainted Tau Fireblade dude. But it's somewhere in the basement, I don't know where. So I'm like, well, I will, and he might even actually already be started converted, and then that would not work well for a regular Tau commander. So I picked up one of those sets yesterday, actually. The Big Goblin says, any tips for giving demo games at conventions? Yeah, I've got a video a long time ago, actually, about that recently. Or I recently pachowed that video in something. But it's an older video about my favorite games to run at conventions. And my favorite game to run at conventions is Song of Blades and Heroes. Song of Blades and Heroes is a relatively independent game made by one guy in Italy. His name is Andrea, and I can't pronounce his last name. It starts with an S. And yeah, it's a great game for teaching people because it's got a very elegant but simple system, and it's easy to teach. And what I do is I use pre-painted, like Dungeons and Dragons, those kind of rubbery, almost like, they're like Hero Clicks, but they don't have the clicky bit, but they're those kind of pre-paints, and I buy those wherever. And then I let the people who are playing, I let them use those guys because they're rubbery. I can throw them into the sink and wash them off if they get Cheeto dust all over them or whatever at a convention. But then as the person who's teaching it, I control all the skeletons and the necromancer and all that stuff, and those are all nicely painted generally by me. I've got some in there that are actually painted by a friend of mine too. But then I control those, and I don't get Cheeto dust all over those. And then we kind of have a game and play that way. And usually I have like 2 to 4 Warbands that are only like 3 models each. So they each get 3 models, and I have a ton of skeletons, which they're like, I don't know how we're going to kind of get through this whole thing, but the way the game works, it actually works out quite nice. So it's a great teaching kind of thing. You don't really even need rulers, because in Song of Blades and Heroes, because they're scale agnostic, they basically, everything is either done short, medium, or long. So you basically make these dowels ahead of time. You just pre-measure. So if you're using 28 millimeter, a long is this long, but if you're using 15 millimeter, then the long is only like this long, or whatever. So you have a bunch of those, just you cut them up early, and then you give them a bunch, and you give them some dice, and it's 6-siders, and then you have some, and it's very easy. You don't have to use tape measures, even, all that kind of stuff. So it works out real well. Paul Noxie says, looking through my commander's book, seems I have most of the Death Guard minis already. Handy. Yeah, I had at least one already. The guy who's got like the big tank on his back and has like the hose, and he's spewing all kinds of stuff. I was going to add him to my normal Death Guard army anyway, and so I already had him, but he's not painted yet. So he's going to be my commander for Death Guard. I can't think of his name. Something gross, probably. Yeah. Got some discussion about whether Commander Farsight from the Tau has a Chaos Blade, or whether it's a Necron weapon, or who knows. Mr. Kivashi says, Uncle Adam, have you ever bought a single model or kit for a small project and then it ballooned into a full-fledged army? Not necessarily a single model, but probably, like my Adeptus Mechanicus for Kill Team, I'm pretty sure will eventually at least bloom into a detachment for 40k. Maybe not a full-fledged army, but I have written up a list for my Primaris, basically a 2,500 point list for my Primaris and for a detachment of Adeptus Mechanicus. So there would be, at least 2 detachments, if not 3, but one of those detachments would be AdMech. So that's kind of happened. Yeah, I don't know that it's gone beyond that. Like, when I started my Chaos guys, that was kind of my plan to start Chaos, and I've built other stuff. Now, it's possible that I'm sure that with something like Kill Team or whatever, you're going to see more of that, because you're going to see people building 15, 20 guys maybe, and then all of a sudden going, well, if I just bought a couple of vehicles in this, and then I'd have probably a 1,000 point army, that kind of stuff I could see. I've maybe done that actually with Age of Sigmar, because you can generally, Age of Sigmar, like most everybody around here, it seems plays around the 1,000 point level, so that's a lot less of a a number, that's a lot less of a model count. So I probably have bought a kit before going, this is a cool kit, I'm gonna use it for something else, and then it's turned into, like, my Chaos army is such a hodgepodge of different stuff between regular Chaos, Varangard, goat people, rat people, all that kind of stuff, that, it's kind of gone that way. I can see that, sir, certainly. Hot Blood says, I also thought the greater good triumphed over all. Well, depends. What else have we got? VJ Morph says, Adam, I went and met with the owner of a local bookshop that is opening in my town and chatted as they are interested in stocking GW product. Looks like I might be running demo games. Any tips? Tips for demo games. Definitely think kind of like a teacher. Think that the person you're teaching doesn't understand any of the terminology, because there's a very good chance they probably don't. So you kind of have to explain everything more, which is important. I think that one of the big points of being able to teach games to people is to not, like, you have to know your audience. Like, if you are, let's say you're at Adepticon and you want to teach somebody how to play Conflict 47, which they've never played before, but they're wearing like a Warhammer shirt and they've got a big battle foam bag with them and all that kind of stuff. You can say D6 and probably figure that they know what the hell you're talking about, as opposed to saying a 6-sided die, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So if I go to a convention, like when I go to a small convention in our area, that's usually in February, that is mostly board gaming, some Magic, some RPG, very little in the way of miniatures. And so when I go there and teach Song of Blades and Heroes, I understand that most of my audience does not know what a miniature game barely even is. Like, they know they exist, but they don't know anything about them, so I have to explain things a little bit more clearly, which is fine. But if I was to teach a Song of Blades and Heroes, like I said, at Adepticon or LVO, I could kind of get through a lot more shortcuts a little bit more quickly, because like if you talk about initiative, an RPG person's going to know what you're talking about. A board game person might not, but they've probably heard of it. Collectible card game person, if that's all they've ever played, they may not get the concept of initiative. So these little things like that, you kind of have to sort of gauge your audience and kind of go there. Charles Waltz, do you think AdMech is a good army for Kill Team? I like the look of them. I think they're cool. I have no idea whether they're good for Kill Team. I'm not particularly competitive, so I don't, or strategic, frankly. So I don't really get to. I shouldn't be the person you're asking, frankly. I don't. like I'm looking forward to them. So yeah. Hot Blood says, have you ever checked out Creature Caster Demons? I have. I've got 3 that I picked up at Adepticon. Well, I mean, I didn't pick them up at Adepticon because they had sold out. This year, Creature Caster it was their first year, I believe, being at Adepticon as a vendor, and they brought stuff and just about sold out of absolutely everything. They got crushed, which is, good, I'm sure, because they sold tons and tons of stuff, made money. So they had a deal where they were like, well, if you order from us at the convention, we'll ship it to you for free. So I ended up ordering 3 models from them, and I haven't worked on them yet because I've been working on Kill Team. But they are coming eventually. I want to do, like, initially I was like looking at them, I'm like, well, can I use some of these maybe as like a Demon Prince or something like that, for my Chaos Army? And yeah, technically I probably could, but I think I actually want to try to do a little bit more just display type painting on them, which I've never done a ton of, so it'll be kind of a learning process. Now, there are some people that be like, well, I don't want to practice my display painting on a pretty expensive resin model, blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of like, push comes to shove and I really hate the paint job, I can strip it. It's not the end of the world. I mean, they're on resin, which makes it a little harder to strip, but not that hard. I mean, you just have to be careful about what you use to strip it, but I think we can go with that, so yeah. Any suggestions to get my father interested into tabletop games? We're older, prior service, and he once played the super old paper map and shipped World War II game. Warhammer isn't doing it for him. If you've got some interest in military stuff, I'd look at maybe Bolt Action. Bolt Action or Flames of War, frankly, depending on what kind of scale and what kind of you're looking for. Like if you've already got some terrain that you think you can repurpose as World War II terrain, like trees or hedges or rocks or whatever, obviously sci-fi buildings aren't going to work or whatever, or fantasy buildings. Although sometimes like a Tudor-style house, that could be easily European theater, as long as it's not covered in skulls or weird crap. But yeah, Bolt Action could work pretty well. It's kind of skirmishy. It's like a really large skirmish game. There's usually a tank and between 20 and 30 models per army. But that might be something to do, and or something interesting to your father. Otherwise, Flames of War is like 15 or 10 millimeter scale, so the guys are way smaller, and usually you would just have a rectangular base with like 5 guys on them, and you move them in squads. And then the tanks are all a little bigger than Matchbox cars. And so, yeah, that's also a potential thing. Depends on what you're looking for along those lines. There are other games out there, too, that are military-based that are not... I mean, that's the thing about, like, World War II, is that there's no copyright on it. So if you don't like this manufacturer's M4A1, Sherman tank, there's other companies that also make them because there's no copyright. You can't go, well, no, but this is our copyright on, because no, that's a military tank made by the United States, so that's not a thing. So there's lots of different companies that make the same stuff that will work generally in the same games, depending, as long as the scale is cool, or consistent or whatever. There's a rule set that I saw at a convention in Detroit, well, outside of Detroit, but the convention was called Midwest Miniatures Expo, which was a lot of fun. But there was a set there called What a Tanker, made, I believe, by Two Fat Lardies, which is a UK thing. And that's a rule set you can buy online. If you're really into books, I think they do a print-on-demand type thing. If not, you can get a PDF or some sort of ebook sort of equivalent. And that's also a game that's designed, and you can play it in multiple scales, from what I understand. It's not, you can play it like in 15 millimeter or whatever, the small 10 millimeter or whatever it is, like Flames of War, but you can also play with larger tanks if you want to go that way too. So there's that. Kraken Slayer says, hey, Uncle Adam, have you ever tried War Machine Hordes? I love the models and the rules look fun, seeing as you can pick up the models with smaller bases and throw them into their friends. Yeah, I have played War Machine. Never played Hordes. I had a Khador army, and I played in like version 1.5, and I played a little bit in 2, and then I stopped, and I have not played in 3, so I haven't played in a long time. I like the models. I don't know. There's just something about the game that's never quite completely struck me. I did not like like I had a really bad game one time that really soured me on it. It was when the Troll Bloods. I was playing against Sam actually, but it was when the Troll Bloods basically had Disgustingly Resilient. They pretty much had except it was like on a 5/6. Basically, they just didn't. If you went and like put a wound on them on a 5 or 6, it didn't happen. It was called Toughness, I think, at the time or something like that. And his dice were on fire, and I just couldn't do anything the entire game. It was just really rough. The other thing, too, is that I really liked the game originally in concept, War Machine, because it had big warjacks, and the warjacks I thought were super cool, and I wanted to have big battles of warjacks versus warjacks. But as it turned out, the way the game is written in the rules, as it turns out, the best builds are you barely take one warjack. Like, you have to take a warjack, so it's like a warjack taxed. And then everything else is all just troops. So you end up with this large army. When I wanted just like a small elite army of like big heavy dudes, but then, you know, you would just get completely steamrolled, and it was a whole thing. So not particularly awesome, at least in my opinion. But that's where that's at. Let me see here. Talking a little bit about Creature Caster. They are super cool. Really cool. John says, Uncle Adam, thanks for the how to use an airbrush video. You started using a cheap one I bought from Harbor Freight, and your video helped a bunch. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. I need to add some more videos to that, I think, to that playlist. I need to do some more videos on that. I've got a bunch of different plans on that. Not just airbrush, but other types of painting videos I want to do too. So, Houston says that War Machine Hordes is highly competitive. That's also the case. That's also very true. Yeah. So there's that. Caesar, I'm going to say Caesar, says that Mark III, meaning Warhammer, or sorry, War Machine / Hordes Mark III, the third edition of the rules, hasn't been very good. Too many changes and inconsistency for my tastes. Yeah, I remember when they were coming out with it, and they were saying it was going to be streamlined and do this and that and other thing, and then I talked to a bunch of people that didn't necessarily find that to be the case. So that's kind of interesting. DJ Todd P. Harris says, I use my Khador as an Imperial Guard detachment. Well, that's kind of cool. Like, War Machine troops seem even a bit larger. Like, I almost think War Machine's maybe like 32 millimeter. Like, you know how like Warhammer stuff is like 28 millimeter, but it's heroic scale, so everybody's kind of bulky and has wrists that are this big around. I frequently seems to me that, like, for the most part, everybody in War Machine and Hordes is just like a head taller than your average, Games Workshop, Warhammer or Age of Sigmar folk. So, yeah, there's that. You would basically be just having a group of Imperial Guard who were, Khador, and so they would look like they were very Winter Guard kind of, but they would just be really tall Imperial Guardsmen, which, depending on the world they come from, totally doable. There's nothing wrong with that. Thoughts on the new Underworlds warbands? I kind of want to get the goblins or whatever, the night goblins. I kind of want to get them because I don't know. I've never painted night goblins before, and they look kind of cool. I like the look of them. They're a little silly, but not too silly. There are 9 of them though in that package, so that's kind of a bigger. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but I'm kicking it around. I was actually looking at the box yesterday at the shop, but I didn't pick them up. I did, however, pick up a box of Gretchens. Because you get a box of Gretchens, like 10 Gretchens for like $16.50 or something like that. And so when I do my orc kill team, again, never done orcs before, so I'm looking forward to that. When I do my orc kill team, there's going to be some Gretchens in it just because I think they're cool. So yeah, they may not be very good in the game or whatever. I'm sure they're not. They're like 3 points, but I'm still going to add some because they're just kind of cool models. So, and they're kind of cheap, so that'll be cool. Paul Noxie says that Disgusting Resilience saved me a few times last Wednesday playing against Primaris, so kind of needed it. Yeah, one of the games I played at Valhalla, it kind of saved my bacon a couple of times too against Deathwatch. Evil Eyeball says, I have Khador and Circle. I just never liked Hordes. I don't know why. I think it's because every time I played against a Hordes player, I lost. And they had all kinds of weird shenanigans that they could pull. It's kind of like playing, for me at least, it's kind of like playing against Eldar. You know, I go up against an Eldar player and they're like, okay, well, I get to do this thing where I get to put, you know, a wound on everybody in your entire army. I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, because it's the amulet of Legolas or whatever. And I'm like, Space Legolas. And I'm like, huh, okay. And so there's just weird little, like, I'm used to playing generally Space Marines, so I know Space Marines, and I don't know. Like, they could be lying to me, I guess. I suppose Eldar players could have been just tricking me this entire time with all their crazy Space Elf shenanigans. But I don't think they do. It's just, there's a lot. Like, whatever that goofy hover tank they've got is, Wave Serpent, I think. So it's a transport that also shoots 28 different guns and also can fly and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, all right, well, I have a Rhino. It has a Stormbolter on it. Yeah, so that's kind of the thing with Hordes. When I would play against Hordes, because it's cool that they're compatible and that War Machine can play against Hordes, I think that's a really cool idea. But I always got whooped by Hordes players, so that's why I was annoyed by it. Gobos are tiny, so they don't take long to paint. That's also true. Yeah, those Night Goblins are pretty small, so they should be pretty quick paints. That's a very good point. There are 9 of them, but they're all small. BJ Morph says, I built the Gobos last week and then built them over, I bought the Gobos last week and built them over the weekend. We'll probably prime and base coat them this week. Yeah. That's the other thing, too, is that, you know, because they are, you know, Warhammer Underworlds models, they're press fit, they go together really easy, so they're not going to be difficult to build, I wouldn't think. So that's definitely. Melanie says, you missed my post. Big E being perpetual. Thoughts? I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know who Big E is. Evil Eyeball says, the few of us remaining in War Machine here are running a journeyman league come early November. Yeah, I mean, they're still around, you know. I mean, obviously, I think that they're trying to figure out what to do next as a company. Privateer is. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see. Goliath says, Gretchen Leader in Orc Kill Team is what my 10-year-old son plays. Yeah, I think it would be sort of fun to have a Gretchen Leader. I was probably going to go with a Boss Knob Leader instead, but I'm still using Battlescribe to figure out what I'm going to run. I think a Gretchen Leader would be kind of hysterical. You know, like all these giant orcs and stuff like that taking... because you could also... A lot of times, it's just a smart move, at least I've found, to try to hide your leader. Because especially if you're playing just all your specialists are at level 1, all the leader does is gives you, like, for the most part, other than if you start using some tactics and getting a little fancy with that, the big thing that the leader does is gives you that extra command point every turn. So a lot of times you don't want to get him into harm's way, or her, because you don't want that model to croak, and then you don't get your extra CP every round. So having a Gretchen Leader and just hiding that tiny little model behind like a barrel or something like that, I think would be sort of funny. Yeah. Oh, Big E is the Emperor. Oh yeah, well that makes more sense. Perpetual means he can res and he fully dies. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I read something recently about a bunch of stuff about the Emperor, and some people are like, oh, is the Emperor actually a Chaos God? You know, and then there's all these different kind of speculations, and I honestly don't know. I've read an okay amount of Black Library, but I have not read enough of the lore to be able to speak about it real well, so I won't. But I don't know. I mean, it's a very strange story of where the Emperor came from and how he got there. So, if I had to guess, I would say that when they first wrote the 40K fluff back in the late 80s, they didn't know where they were going with it. So a lot of this is what they call retconned, which means that's when you you basically go back and rewrite story in the old days to make it make sense with your current stuff. Happens in comic books all the time, happens in all kinds of fiction, but comic books a lot. where you're basically like, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And you're like, but I have the book that says that this is the way it happened. You know, a lot of hand waving. So anyway, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, you know, Bobby G came back. Okay, that's cool. I guess the question is, will they ever actually bring the Emperor back? Is he ever actually going to get off of the golden throne there? You know, like flush finally and like get off. I don't know. That's a good question. It would be interesting to see. It would be a huge shift in the way that the story is told, and that the way that the books are written, and the way that even the rules are done. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I get the feeling that the status quo maybe just makes more sense. It would be a humongous change if they did that, and I don't know that that's what they're looking to do at this point. Like right now, they're riding pretty high. You know, things are selling real well. I don't know. I mean, now on the other hand, the question is this: would an Emperor model sell like crazy? Probably. I don't know that I would buy one, because like, what are you going to do with him? Like, how could you put the Emperor in your you know army? That would be ridiculous. So, like, it wouldn't be the thing. Have an Emperor in your kill team. That would be a spectacular kill team. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Kill team or Underworld, asks Guru. Guru? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's GHRU. Maybe it's an acronym. I play both, honestly. If you have to choose one, then I would say, because the games are so very different, do you prefer more of a board game kind of style thing with very specific, this is your army kind of things? There's no list building. There's deck building in Underworlds, but there's no list building. You buy a box. I don't have a box around here, but you buy a box and there's X amount of people inside, and that's what you run, and then it's all about card like deck building. Whereas Kill Team, you have a number of models that you can, you know, like Death Guard has got Plague Marines and Poxwalkers. That's it. You know, but there's other armies that have 4 or 5 different choices, and so you've got that to choose from, and then you build a list based off of that, and that's the way you go. It kind of depends on whether you like that. I mean, it also depends whether you're a big fan of sci-fi or your fantasy. There's a lot of different options. One of the nice things about Underworld's strengths actually is just the fact that it's so small and easy to take with me to a shop. Like, I've got like a small little C4 battle foam bag that they make that's designed for Shadespire, and I can just carry that little thing, and it's got my boards in there, it's got my models, it's got my cards, it's got my dice, it's got my tokens, it's got all the junk is in there that I need, and the instructions, all that jazz. It's really great. Kill Team, I mean, if you're going to the shop and going to use their terrain, or you're going to your friend's house to use their terrain, you can get by a real small package, because you can just take your Kill Team, which might be 5, 6, 7, 8 guys, maybe more, and you take some dice and a ruler or whatever, you know, tape measure, and your book. But yeah, it totally depends on what you like, honestly. Let's see here. J Tick says that they have an Emperor model coming for Horus Heresy. Well, that makes total sense. But I think it's extremely unlikely for 40k. Yeah, I do too, honestly. I just don't see it. Again, maybe down the road something will happen. There will be some sort of glimmer that comes from the Emperor that will change things or whatever. Or they'll just keep bringing back, you know, they'll bring back another Primarch or something. But I don't know that they're going to get him off of the seat, as it were. Brandon Johnson says, have you looked into Gloomhaven? Actually, I won a copy of Gloomhaven at a distributor conference probably 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. It was out of stock at that point. And so they had like this contest, like they're a distributor, so they were able to get stock, I guess, to some degree. And like if you went to the earliest seminars, like the 8 o'clock in the morning seminars, you potentially could win. And so they like gave out tickets at the seminars, and so, you know, like I'm, you know, bleary-eyed there with my friend who I'm at the convention with, or the distributor conference with, and I won Gloomhaven. I was like, oh, that's cool. And it weighed like 100 pounds. All right, not 100 pounds, but it's a really heavy big box. And I brought it home, and then I sold it to a friend of mine. So I have not played it. He enjoys it quite a bit, and that's cool. I would sort of maybe be interested in giving it a try sometime, but I know it's super popular. And I know it's got lots and lots and lots of parts, so there's that too. Melanie says, I watched a bat rep yesterday that one guy took Magnus and Morty. My guess is if they actually make an Emperor model just because he comes back doesn't mean he gets to be playable. He'd be a Lord of War. Yeah, that would make sense. I could see that. I mean, you know, the Mortarion is pretty big, and he's kind of a Lord of War. That makes sense, too. Is there a particular game you like to demo for new people that show an interest into tabletop gaming? Generally, like I said, when I go to conventions, I demo Song of Blades and Heroes. If a person comes who's done some type of gaming before, or even some type of miniature gaming, I am happy to show them, you know, like a game like Kill Team or something like that. And if they're like maybe a Magic player or something like that, then I show them... I used to show them X-Wing, and there's plenty of Magic players that not switched, but also started playing X-Wing at our local shop. But I don't know, the new X-Wing, well, I don't have any of the new X-Wing stuff, you know, the new 2.0 jazz, so I'm not going to be able to teach you that. I could teach you version 1, but that seems a little weird. These days, if you're like a Magic player or something like that, or a little bit more board gamey, like the kind of gateway game that I'll teach you that's real small, that's easy for me to carry, is, like I just said, you know, Warhammer Underworlds. But I think another good gateway game too is very frequently like Zombicide. If you've got like a more of a board game bent to you, that's also not a bad plan as well. Douglas Hooker says, I hope Kill Team Commander makes the possibility of Inquisitors in Kill Team a possibility. That's, you used the word possibility twice there, but I know what you're saying. I totally agree. I'm really looking forward to having some sort of inquisitorial warband. Like, I have Greyfax on a sprue somewhere. Actually, I think it's at work. But yeah, so I have Greyfax like ready to go. I'm gonna build her up, have her be my Inquisitor, and then as a commander, and then have, you know, like a retinue. I do hope that they drop some sort of stuff for that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I get the feeling, I think that they would be set on fire and run out of town on a rail if they didn't make a kill team for Sisters of Battle when they come out sometime next year. And so I'm sure they will, but I would love to see Inquisitors as well. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So yeah. DJ Todd P. Harris says, hey Adam, do you keep the boxes from your games, or do you remove the contents and store them elsewhere? Like, I may have got the Shadespire box somewhere in the basement. I do have the Kill Team box, but that's because I'm using the bottom of the Kill Team box generally to carry my terrain to, like, the shop if we're going to play or whatever. Because the shop has got, like, 40k terrain, but they don't have... I don't think he's built, and I know he hasn't painted the Kill Team terrain yet. So I bring that, and so I just store it all kind of in the box. Like, I keep the terrain in the box, the board is in the bottom, and I hold the box. And then I have... You know, like, you know, pick and pluck type foam, I always hold on to the stuff that I pluck out of pick and pluck foam, because then I can kind of stuff it in between the pieces of terrain so that when I'm carrying the box around, they're not rubbing up against each other, or like in the car on the way to the shop, so that they don't rub the paint off. So I just stuff a bunch of those pieces of foam in between, and then I carry the box that way. I need to find a better carrying solution for the terrain, frankly. I would like to. But right now I've been holding onto that box. But generally I'm not like a box hoarder. I try not to be, at least. I have a tendency to generally get rid of most boxes eventually. Like, once I've bought a kit and I open it up, and now these, and by these I mean these little kind of clamshell-y guys. This is a Painboy, Orc Painboy. He's going to eventually be my commander for my Orc team. These I like to hold on to because sometimes I need like a plastic like palette for painting. You know what I mean? Like, not because I usually use wet palette, but sometimes if you have a squeeze bottle like a Vallejo and you want to use it for dry brushing, if it's too wet already coming out of the bottle, then I will put it onto a piece of plastic, like a blob of it, and let it sit for a couple of minutes to start to dry, and then I'll dip my brush in it for dry brushing. Because I don't normally dry brush from the wet palette, because then the dry brush is too wet. It just doesn't work out. So I use that for this, plus also the inside bottom parts. If I have washes that come in a dropper bottle, which I generally don't like, I love GW pots for washes. For all the rest of the paints, they're meh, but for the washes, they're great because I can just dip my brush in the wash and go to town. But for secret weapon washes that come in, you know, dropper bottles, for army painter ones that come in dropper bottles, you need to put some wash someplace so that you can get it on your brush and then use it for its job. So I usually use the bottom of these things and have it like in the corner, and I kind of tilt it so that the wash stays over here, and then I do over here and whatever. I should find a better solution, but I'm basically kind of recycling. Once these things get too junky, then I throw them in the garbage. So there's that. Where else are we? Paul says, I painted Greyfax for a friend. It's definitely a nice change from all the same power armor and the same colors. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Melanie says, I love that Greyfax model. I'm really looking forward to it as well, yeah. Kim says, Kim Giselle, something? I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, I'm sure. I saw in a vid that you customized a Necron warrior as a comm specialist. Actually, it was a Necron immortal. But yes. Have you customized a basic warrior as a kill team leader? If so, how? I didn't. I did do a Necron Immortal as a leader, and what I did basically is I just, like on their skull, you know, they kind of have this divot that runs along like both sides. This is very difficult to do backwards. So it runs along like this, and it's like just like there's like a very thin like little line. I painted that middle part red, and then there's the symbol on the chest. I also painted that red. So it was almost kind of like a stripe. And then that's how I differentiate my leader in that situation. I also have a commander, like an overlord, but that's a completely different model. He's a whole different thing. He's easy to spot, obviously. But yeah, for the leader, I just basically gave him almost like a stripe of command kind of a thing, you know. Whereas I didn't. But there's other things you could probably do. Can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but there's different things you could do. Eric says, as a brand new kill team player, do you recommend a homogenous team, i.e. all Reavers with knives and pistols, for simplicity, or a diverse team, Swiss Army knife, for flexibility? That is a good question. And as with most things in life, it depends. Like for my Primaris, or for my Space Marine, my Adeptus Astartes list, that is like 3 Primaris, 2 Reavers, and 2 Space Marine Scouts, one of them being a sniper with a camo cloak. So in that situation, I'm kind of all over the board, but my Death Guard, it's just all Plague Marines. I don't even use the Poxwalkers. So it kind of depends on, A, what you got available, what you like, and also the roles that you see these different models taking within the actual battle. One of the reasons I went with that mix that I did for my Astartes was because I wanted a sniper with camo cloak, and I wanted honestly, the last regular scout with a regular bolt rifle, that's how many points I had left. So that was kind of he's sort of a space filler in that situation. As far as the 3 Primaris and the 2 Reavers, I could maybe do 3 Reavers and 2 Primaris. I kind of like the Primaris, though. I like those bolt rifles. I like that 30-inch range. Yeah, I think it honestly depends on what you want to do. Like I said, I went straight Plague Marines with my Death Guard because I didn't want any Poxwalkers, because I kind of honestly don't like the model. That's kind of a thing. The faces are kind of goofy to me, but it's just a aesthetic, personal preference thing. They're built very well, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It depends, like I said, but I generally mix things up. I would say probably, honestly, the only army that I've got for kill team that's all just one thing is the Death Guard. Everything else is a mix of stuff. Like my Necrons, it's Immortals, Warriors, and a single Death Mark. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I would say generally you want to sort of mix things up a little bit, but it's up to you, certainly. Brian Griffith says, mix of Reavers and Intercessors plays pretty nice. Yeah, I could see that too, definitely. All right, so why don't I talk a little bit about, I don't know, something that like I was going to talk about here, product release fatigue. We've been talking about a lot of like Kill Team and now Warhammer Underworlds and all that kind of stuff. And I have seen comments and I've had people reach out to me about product release fatigue. This is interesting to me. and I'll explain why in just a second. So I remember not that long ago when Games Workshop used to release, if you were lucky, 3 codices a year. Like, not even once a quarter, but there would be like, well, there were 3 codex books released this year. That's it. And if it wasn't your army, you were waiting until next year. And people bemoaned that, obviously, and were like, man, I wish you guys would crank this stuff out a little bit faster, and all that kind of jazz. And that, I get that sentiment as well, obviously. And then about 2.5 years ago, along came the new CEO, Kevin Roundtree, and out went the old CEO, Tom Kirby, and things changed. Lots of things changed, which if you've been paying attention, you've obviously seen, the way that they handle social media, the way they're crushing it on YouTube and crushing it on Twitch and doing all kinds of stuff and going to conventions again and all that kind of jazz. And to keep all that stuff sustainable, they all have to produce more stuff. But there's also a benefit to producing more stuff, is because if you put out like one thing every 4 months, and then it turns out that that thing is not the thing that customer A is interested in, they're not buying anything from you that 4-month period. You know what I mean? So when you start putting out more and more stuff, customer A may be like, well, I don't like this thing, but in 2 weeks I'm going to like that thing, and in 4 weeks I might like that thing, and and so putting out more product like that, putting out more stuff, is basically an answer to the complaints that we had 4 or 5 years ago. Totally straight up. Where people were like, man, they sure are slow about producing new stuff. Now it's swung to, man, they are producing too much stuff. Which, personally, I don't get. Like, I don't get the complaint. And the reason for that is because I don't buy everything that they produce. There are people out there who are straight-up collectors, and back in the day used to buy everything that Games Workshop produced, but it wasn't that hard to do because it was at a kind of a trickle. Nowadays, because there's so much stuff, I think that you would be foolish almost to, unless you're just some sort of completist and like you're putting them all like in a closet someplace, and and that's your retirement. You're gonna sell all this stuff later after it goes up in value or whatever your deal is. That's fine. Or you're just independently wealthy, and that's great too. But if you're a normal person like us, the way that I fight product fatigue, product release fatigue, is I only just buy the stuff that I want to buy. Now, that being said, sometimes you're like, okay, cool, but in the last 3 weeks, they've produced 3 different things that I want to buy. Okay. Well, in those situations, you can a lot of times you can decide just not to buy it right away. You can do like, you know what? Like, Kill Team. Right now, you might actually have a hard time buying Kill Team, because from what I understand, the main box is out of print, but they're going to be making more, obviously, because it's sold so well. So if you want to get Kill Team and you wait until it comes out, you can save up your money, and then when Kill Team comes out, you could immediately buy Kill Team and Commanders. Like, there's certain things they're putting out. They just talked about, I just heard this term recently, and it's called a splash release. So it's not limited edition. It's just, we're going to make a whole bunch, and then after it sells out, we're not going to make it anymore. And that's technically different than limited edition, because they're not calling it limited edition. I don't know if it's just a marketing term, splash release versus limited edition. Like, there's a limit and there's an edition, so it's kind of limited edition. But if they say it's limited edition, then people get all weird about it. Whereas if they just put it out there and then eventually it's gone, and they're like, well, we only made so much and then it was gone, you have to kind of maybe keep your eye out on that. If it's a thing, you're like, I can't buy that now, but I can buy it in 6 months. Well, maybe you won't be able to. But like standard stuff like the Kill Team book, that's going to be for sale forever. The big main box, they've said that they're going to be supporting that main box for a long time. Like Commanders, that thing. Now, the individual little boxes of Commanders, little $30 or $35 boxes, those might be a splash released. I don't know. But the way that I've been basically combating product release fatigue is to just not buy those things. I've also been not, like, we were just talking at the beginning of the show about the special, like, 1 day only for sale kind of models. They did one for Age of Sigmar and one for 40K, and you could only buy them in GW stores yesterday, and then you can't get them anyplace else. And I said I wasn't able to get there because it's like a pretty far away for me to get to my local GW store, and so there it is. I don't know. I don't have a problem if I miss something like that, because I also know that there's eBay. Now, if it's super rare, you know it's going to be crazy expensive on eBay. Years and years and years ago, my wife and I, because we're both big Hellboy fans, there's a company called Sideshow Collectibles. They make all kinds of crazy stuff that's based off of like comic books and movies and all that jazz. And they make these like big like figures, but they also make, anyway, long story short, they made Hellboy's gun, the Samaritan. 1-to-1 scales. It was friggin' huge. This giant pistol with these giant honking bullets, and it came like on a base and the whole deal. And it was like $300. And we were like, man, we should get that. That would be really cool. Both of us were like, this would be cool. But we were like not necessarily in the position back then. This is, Jesus, we were just married. So this was 14 plus years ago. And it was just one of those deals where we were like, I don't know. And yeah, we didn't pull the trigger. And now every once in a while, I just kind of poke my head into eBay and look for that. And, you know, they're still like $600, $700, $800. So they're double the price. It's just the way it goes. But it's a collectible. The stuff for Games Workshop and the stuff for pretty much any game convention or, you know, gaming company, not always collectible. Now, this particular model, like yesterday, they'll probably go for a lot of money on eBay. But again, on the other hand, if you then wait maybe 6 months to a year, I'll bet you they'll go for a lot less. So in the very rare situations where you've got like a one-day sale and it's the only time you can buy that model, I can understand why there could be a fatigue issue. Be like, man, I just bought Kill Team and now this one model, and I really want this one model, but I don't have the $35 or whatever it was. I'm assuming it was $35. You know, that's understandable. I get that. But, you know, life is what it is. I don't think that they should slow down, I guess, is the takeaway for this whole part about product, you know, release fatigue. I think them producing the stuff they're producing, it's getting out into all the different nooks and crannies of the industry so that there's people that are only interested in this, people that are only interested in that. You know, they're hitting a lot of stuff. It's way better than the old days where they produced 3 books a year. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it, frankly. And what I just do is I just pick and choose and buy the stuff that I want. And if I don't have the money for something right now, I know that I can save up and get something later. The other thing that you can do too, and some people don't like to do this, but you can also go through your basement and look at all the other stuff that you had to have that you haven't touched, and you could, you know, flip some of that stuff on eBay and then take that money and use it to buy some of the new stuff that you want to get now. I've kind of made a video about that, about hoarding. Don't be a wargaming hoarder. You can look that one up. I would put chow it, but I can't. But yeah, so these are kind of the different things. This is my opinion, at least. This is my little rantamble about the increased production, the increased release schedule, and all that kind of stuff. So Frankie Lee Bailey says that the term splash release usually ties into the plastic model production run. Splash runs are limited production runs where you run a butt ton, which is a legal term, for a month and then move on. Yeah, you know, like that totally makes sense. Owen Jackson says, I agree with you on waiting, especially with minis for well-supported games and armies. There's often a rush for the new thing, and people change their mind, and then you can get deals on eBay. Well, that's also very true. That's a good point. Melanie Dawn says the Lieutenant from yesterday is going for $60 and up on eBay. And again, that's, in my opinion, that kind of stuff is a tax for people who can't wait. You know what I mean? Like, when I was at Origins, I was at the Vallejo booth on Friday during Origins, and I was a guest there painting the, you know, WizKids has got all that line of unpainted plastic models. They're like pre-primed but unpainted. And they had the Beholder. So, like, you know, the iconic Dungeons & Dragons, like, big weird ball with the eye stalks and the one eye and the big mouth. And that Beholder was out of stock because it was very popular and it was out of stock. It's a great kit. And so there were people that were selling that model. It's a $8 model retail. People were selling it on eBay for $100 or more. Some as many as $150 because you could not find it in stores. When I was at that booth, and me and Jason were sitting there and painting Beholders, all the people in the audience also had Beholders because they had paid to be in, you know, on the thing, and we were all painting along together and talking, all that stuff. And those Beholders were about to be back in stores. So the people who were trying to sell them, so if you were a person who spent $125 on a beholder, if you would have waited 2 more weeks, you could have spent 8. And that's kind of the way it works. And so keeping track of that kind of stuff and maybe holding off a little bit sometimes. There's, you know, if you see something like that lieutenant that's going for 60 now, I can guarantee you in a year he'll be going for 30. So it's just the way it works. Well, guarantee is a strong word. I would be very surprised if it wasn't the case. So yeah, that kind of stuff to me is not, that's, yeah. All right. Let me see. What else have we got here? I have to get another Blood Angel starter box so I can have 3 Ball Predators. Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. The gets yeah. There's a yeah. That's right. Let me see here. Caesar says, I agree. I don't get the product release fatigue. Don't buy it all. I also have everything for Stormcast, Khorne, and Nighthaunt except yesterday's model, which sucks. Well, you know, that, like I said, that happens. What else? Like, there was wasn't there a 30th anniversary, like, Primaris Lieutenant that was, like, a big kind of deal limited, and then when I went to Adepticon, it was in the swag bag. Like, I picked one up someplace because I'm like, oh, it's limited edition, and then it was in my swag bag as well, so now I have 2. I think I've used one. Skywatcher says Primaris release fatigue. Well, you know, I mean, there's you could also say Stormcast release fatigue. There's a lot of people who are like, you know, they keep releasing stuff for Primaris and they keep releasing stuff for Stormcast, and I can guarantee you that if it didn't sell, they would stop. You know what I mean? Like, if Wood Elves were making them all the money out there, then every other release would be Wood Elves, just like every other release seems to be Stormcast or whatever. They're a company, they do what they do because it makes them money, and they know that a lot of people like to buy Stormcast and a lot of people like to buy Primaris / Space Marines. It's always been the way it's worked out. It's just, you know, it is what it is. Yeah. FS says, I don't think that we'll see regular Space Marines ever again. You know, I don't know. Maybe they are trying to kind of phase them out. You may be right. I mean, I can't think of a regular size Space Marine thing that they've released in the last year or two. Not really, no. So, yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. They maybe just be doing that just to eventually, like, just completely phase out the TAC Marines. Or else there's still so many of them out there that they figure, well, if you still want to buy regular TAC Marines, you can get them because they're out there. But, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how if that's the plan or whatever. Tyler Barry says, if you want to be frustrated by limited releases, collect Funko Pops. Oh, no, thank you. I don't think I own a single one of those. I have some sort of weird, like, off-brand vinyl figure that was, I think, given to me as a birthday present by a friend. It might be Wolverine, but it's not Funko Pops. They don't have that square head. He's got more of a round head. So, Joshua says, greetings from the Philippines, Adam. Just got back from a wedding. Glad to know I didn't miss the show. Well, I mean, you know, it's about 45 minutes left, so we're not too bad. Robert Perlman says, yeah, my local GW store still has 10 of those 30th anniversary Primaris fellas. Yeah, they're cool models. Like I said, I'm 98% sure I'm already using one of them in my normal Warhammer, like, 2,000 point army. Definitely. Chiba Mech. That's a lot of fun to say. Considering the popularity of the Gaunt's Ghost series, any thoughts on a Tanith range eventual release? Well, I mean, you know, they added the Scions and stuff probably, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. There hasn't been any, like, real new sculpts for Guard in a while. It would be cool to see that. I would also like to see, what's the yellow guys? Steel Legion. I'd like to see maybe some plastic Steel Legion. That would be kind of cool. They could do some really interesting kind of stuff with them. Not quite full-blown Deathcore Krieg kind of look, you know, big guy trying, because the Deathcore's got the great coats and, like, the skull type kind of, like, gas masky things. Maybe get, I don't know, I just think that, like, Steel Legion could be cool. I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what they're going to do now with Cadia being all broken. So yeah, I am interested to see what they do in the future for new Imperial Guard stuff, but like I said, there hasn't really been much in the way of new models for Imperial Guards. VJ Morph says, I love it when GW releases plenty of Primaris and Stormcast. It gives me a reason to not buy anything that week. Well, yeah, you can look at it that angle as well. It makes total sense. Joshua says, you mean Mighty Mugs? I think you're right. I think actually that particular Wolverine is a Mighty Mug. You're right. I think that's the brand name. That's crazy. I've never seen them anyplace before. I've always ever seen those crazy square-headed Funko Pops. Son of Mars says, I got into painting minis 3 weeks ago. Invested heavily, and he's got asterisks around it, so that would be bold if the chat allowed that. Anyway, invested heavily into the Citadel line and models and paint, and then Speed Freaks hit, so passing that for now, even though I really like the models. Well, the trick is that will probably be... I don't know that it's going to be a big release, and then they're going to... I feel like that one's going to come out. It's going to be a box. You'll be able to buy it. I don't know that maybe they'll make some additions to it, but I don't think that they will, at least not too many. But it should be around for a good long time. So if you want to get it in 6 months from now, you should still be able to find it. That's generally the case. Not always, but sometimes. Like when Shadow War Armageddon first came out, they had those huge box sets that first came out that had all the cool terrain in it, and the 2 sets, it was like Scouts, Space Marine Scouts, and I want to say Orc Boys, and had the book and all that jazz. And when those sold out, and they sold out quickly, and they didn't make that many, then they were gone. And then you had to buy the book separately and everything else separately. Kill Team, they're currently out of the big box, but I've been hearing that they're making more and they're on their way. So that is not a splash release. That big box, they want to keep putting that out for quite some time. Strangely, yesterday at my local shop, I realized that they have 4 of those, whereas like every place else are out of print, but my shop locally has 4. So that's kind of interesting. Paul says, greetings from Belfast, sitting back after a large Sunday lunch. I'm getting a little peckish myself, but I've got lunch afterwards. Skywatcher Adept says, Grey Knights have no Primaris. No, that's true. That's a good point. They probably wouldn't. I would think that the Grey Knights would be wary of Primaris Marines in some fashion. So, yeah, I could see that. Plus, I wouldn't think that the Primaris... being kind of genetically whatever, like made, sort of, I wouldn't think that they would be super psychic. And I think that basically all Grey Knights kind of need to be psychers to some degree. So yeah, I can see that. Bullet Bishop Byron says, fatigue for Cool Mini or Not Kickstarters? I don't have any fatigue for those either, because I just generally don't pull the trigger. So that's incredibly non-fatiguing to not pull the trigger for Cool Mini or Not Kickstarters. Last Kickstarter I did was... the Hellboy kind of game from, well, it's not a kind of game. It's a game. It's not exactly a board game. It's a gateway game. It's got like some sort of kind of like skirmishy sort of kind of elements to it. But it's on a board, It's maybe along the lines of like your Space Hulk or even your Zombicide type of thing, but not with really zombies. But, it's Hellboy. There's probably some zombies actually, but yeah, I'm a big Hellboy fan, like I mentioned earlier, and so I'm waiting for that one to come eventually. Maybe by the end of this year. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm looking forward to that because I saw the sculpts at Gen Con. No, Adepticon. Yeah, at Adepticon, and I was really like, I want to paint a lot of those. So that's the last one that I've done as far as Kickstarters. Otherwise, I haven't done Kickstarters in quite some time. Soldier 4 USA 2005 says, do you have any idea why GW hasn't redone the molds for Black Templars? Current prints look horrible because they're worn out and the army has some really cool flavor. I agree with you that the army has some really cool flavor. I suspect that they haven't done it because they don't sell, or they don't sell that much. That's probably the case. I mean, it's super crazy expensive to make new models because of the steel injection molded, all the molds themselves. For those of you who don't know, the molds for a single product can cost anywhere from what I've been told, $10,000 to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 US to have that mold produced. So that's a huge upfront cost. And then every time you inject plastic into it and make another unit, it's pennies because it's just, the plastic is very inexpensive, but that upfront cost takes a lot. So we had a conversation actually yesterday in the Patreon chat that I did about it's like these models, that these special limited edition models that were only for sale yesterday. like, it's crazy that they went and made a steel, mold to be able to just produce models for one day, because how many are they going to make? So there's that. But Frankie Lee Bailey was saying, because he's worked in the industry of injection molding, that they could have put those, because they're single sprues. They're like one of these things where it's just one single tiny sprue. It's like, what is that, 4 inches by 3 inches? Those could have been in a bigger mold, like that makes some other stuff, so that if you inject the whole mold, you get like that Primaris dude, the Spooky Boy, and like some other kit. And then you do that, and you make enough for the 500th store sale on the 20th, and then you can basically plug the mold so that when you use that mold again, it doesn't make any more of the guys on the side. It only makes the rest of the mold. You see what I'm saying? So, which I kind of assumed you could do that, but Frankie was like, yeah, you can totally plug a mold so that not all of it goes. And then that makes sense. So in that situation, that would work. But in general, if they look at something and they go, a small group of people might be interested in this, there's very little that's going to actually generally get them to actually spend that money up front to be able to crank out new molds. And that's just the molds. That's just the steel molds. Think about how much it takes to design and do all the CAD and all the crazy, computer design that they do now, all that stuff. I mean, the amount of stuff that they're putting out now, which is giving some people product release fatigue, is astounding, like how much they're able to produce. And so I think it's kind of a testament to what they've done to their business practices. Like they have to pay all these designers to work tons and tons of hours to crank out all this different stuff so that they can then spend tons of money up front to make all these different molds and then produce these plastic kits, which is why most of the other smaller companies out there are still using metal, because creating a mold and pouring metal models is far cheaper, or resin, that too. But yeah, injection molded plastic is an incredibly expensive process, and you don't do it for a whim. Generally, you don't do it for, well, this might sell. You've got to do it for stuff that is going to sell, which is why, like, as a person who loves Black Templar, don't get me wrong, I would love to see a new Black Templar kit, really would. But the fact is that they took Black Templar, they're no longer their own codex, and they moved them into the Space Marine Codex back in like 6th edition, and I was kind of bummed about that. So it's just the way it kind of works. That took a lot longer than I thought. Sorry about that. Hot Blood says, yeah, no sight of new Black Templar stuff. Nope, there you go. It's true. PMC says, did you ever paint the old minis made by Rel Partha back in the 80s? That's when I started painting. The only Rel Partha minis that I probably ever painted were probably Battletech. Yeah, because they used to make a bunch of Battletech stuff, and I painted a bunch of those. But otherwise, for the most part, not really, yeah. Where else are we here? Adam, what do you think of GW moving some of their production to China? I mean, it doesn't surprise me. That's where a lot of plastic, like tooling and injection molding and all that stuff seems to end up. I don't really know much about, politics and international business and stuff like that, but I just know that generally that stuff is cheaper over there. Now, that being said, what I do know a little bit more about, though, is printing. So if they start getting a lot of their books printed over in China, then you might see some of their stuff ship late, because that seems to be the kind of way it works these days. If you look at Privateer Press, most of their books, a lot of them get printed over in China, and then they miss the boat or whatever the deal is, and then they're like, well, it was going to come out in 3rd quarter, but now it's coming out in 4th quarter because it didn't get back from China. And the thing is that living in Wisconsin, we have a lot of paper here. I have a lot of friends that work in printing. I've worked in industries that serve the printing industry for years, and I know that a lot of the books, like just normal perfect bound books, I don't seem to have a perfect bound book around here. What the heck? Anyway, perfect bound is like not hardcover. It's like the soft cover. It's like the current Kill Team main book. It's soft cover, and it's got like a squared binding. It's not got staples in the end. Perfect bound books, you can get those printed in America in comparison to China for probably just a touch more, except that it's not going to have to get shipped from the other side of the planet. you know. So it's less likely to be late. It's less likely to disappear in a storm or who knows what. And so, yeah, that's my major gripe with game producers who ship their printing over to China, because I'm like, well, good luck. I mean, look at there was a game called Mercs, and I say was because I don't think they produce anything anymore. Their 2.0 version of their rules book was more than a year late, and it basically kind of caused the downfall of their very small company. They were like a couple of guys, but they were producing amazing models. They were producing, I think, really cool rules, amazing artwork, all this stuff. They decided, we're going to make a new, thick, hardcover 2.0 book. It's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. And there were at least 2 Gen Cons where they were standing there without any product because it was just so late in shipping, and it was, you know, in transit or whatever the deal was. I've been told that a lot of times these big, huge container ships that come over the sea, like something leaks from like one container to another because they're in giant stacks. There's all kinds of issues. Sometimes these containers get pushed off the boat for reasons, and then there goes your product, you know, or it gets caught in customs, and there's all this stuff, and it's a mess. And it's nothing against the Chinese. It's just that it's working with a company that's on the other side of the planet. It's just very difficult. If you're an American company and you get stuff printed in America, you could drive there, get in a car, drive there, and knock on the door and go, "Where's my stuff?" It's very difficult to do that with China, you know. So, or anyway, if you got them printed in France, it would be difficult because it's way over there. You have to fly over there. It's a whole thing. Probably a little bit more difficult in China because there's probably, I don't know, like they're still technically a communist country, right? So it might be hard to get in there or whatever. But if you drive to like Ripon, Wisconsin, which is just over there, you know, to get your stuff printed and you want to get it now, you can do that. It's right there. So anyway, plastics is a totally different story, and I don't know a ton about plastics, but it seems like every game company gets all their plastics made in China, and the fact that GW has still been doing the majority of it in the UK is cool, but I know some of the terrain, like some of the Age of Sigmar terrain, and if you look at the back of the box, it says, you know, produced in China. And if you look at the Ophidian Archway, it is a hot mess. Like, that is a terrible kit. Love the look of it, like the concept, but the actual, I put it together, there's huge gaps, it's a giant pain. The plastic is not physically soft, but the detail seems softer than it looks on the package. It's just kind of a bummer. But that's made in China. And I don't even think it's like regular plastic. It doesn't feel like the regular plastic, like, let's say, the Kill Team terrain or most of the regular hard plastic terrain. It's like not soft like bendy, but it's a totally different plastic. And, you know, it is what it is. So, it'll be interesting to see what the quality looks like on some of their stuff as they kind of, if they're going to be shifting more and more to doing it over there. As far as costs, I don't know. You know, I guess there's benefit there, but we'll see. Houston Percy said Mercs had great models and a great idea with sad execution. Like I said, some of that execution was that it took forever for their second book to come out because it was behind. They also had another board game style version of it too. Mercs Conflict? I don't know what it was called. It was like a flatter game board, and you played like in an office. It was it was basically like a gunfight in like an office building, and that took a really long time. They did a Kickstarter. It was popular. Myth also was held up. I mean, they had lots of problems with the production. Sorry, I'm making the camera wiggle. I got to figure out something new for that. Saying the cost savings are sometimes not worth it. I can understand that as well, definitely. Nicholas says, OMG, that damn archway. Yep, built it myself. I've got to figure out now that I've built it and I've primed it, I've got to, after it's done, I've got to maybe put moss. Because, like, the archway, you put it together, and, like, the parts of the edges, there's a huge gap. So you can, like, see through where it's supposed to be like a column, but you can just see through it if you get it to the right angle. So I'm going to have to cover it in, like, moss. And be like, oh, it got all mossy and grew over there. Yeah, but it's actually just to block the holes. So, yeah. Brian Griffith says, all the Sector Mechanicus, Shadow War, and Sector Imperialis kill team is made in China, so it seems like they resolved some of those quality issues. Maybe a different manufacturer within China, and that would be good to know. Because, yeah, like I said, there's some of the Age of Sigmar stuff, and some of the other stuff's awesome. Like, I love, the heck did I build that I love from them? The Baleful Realm Gates. those are great. Like, they fit together perfectly. The plastic's really nice. There's good detail. Those are great. But that Ophidian Archway, not so great. Let's see, what else? Mercs Recon, that's what that game was called. Thank you, Houston. I appreciate that. VJ Morph says, someone asked, oh yeah, did you get the micro HDMI cable? So my plan was yesterday, before the live show with patrons, I was going to try to use a new camera rather than this goofy webcam. I was going to actually use it's a Panasonic Lumix G7, which is a mirrorless Micro Four Thirds camera, for those of you who are nerdy enough to know what that means. And I was going to use that and plug that directly into my computer using a thing made by a company called Elgato. Elgato makes a lot of stuff that Twitch people use, streamers and stuff, a lot of capture card stuff. And they have this little thing called a Cam Link, and you plug it into USB 3.0 plug, and then you plug HDMI into that, plug that into your camera, and now your computer thinks that your fancy schmancy camera with interchangeable lenses is a webcam. Right. So as it turns out, I don't have the right adapter. Like, I thought that it was that camera had a mini HDMI plug out, and it turns out it was micro. So when I was at the store, I bought a mini, came home, went, nope, that's too big. I made a mistake. And then my plan was yesterday after the show, where I still had to use the regular webcam, I told people I was going to go to Best Buy, which I did, and they did not have, they had a mini to regular HDMI adapter, but they didn't have a micro in stock. So because it was like a hook and it was a thing, but there was nothing on it. So I was like, all right. So I thought, well, I could run around to a couple of different places to see if they've got it, but there's not a lot of places here in town that might. So I said, well, and I pulled up my phone and I ordered 2 6-foot cables that go from micro HDMI to regular HDMI from Amazon, and they'll be here tomorrow, and they cost $6 each. So problem will be solved technically tomorrow. So we'll see if I can get it to work. I'm still a little dubious as to whether it'll work well with XSplit and all that stuff, but from what I've looked online, it's supposed to. What does this mean to you? This means to you that potentially the picture will look clearer, in theory, going forward once I get that better camera. Plus, it won't like get darker and change. Like, see how everything got like a little bit bluer there? Like, that's nice. That's great that you can see my palm. That's great. And then that kind of eventually refocuses. But like as the light changes and all that kind of jazz, it just gets weird. Using one of these bigger cameras for that, I'll be able to set everything manually, so it won't change. And like sometimes I'm talking and then I go to focus or whatever the deal is, just different. It's just going to make things look nicer. That's hopefully the plan. So we'll see. But that's where we're at. So yes, Frankie Lee Bailey, are you using the webcam or the DSLR today? I'm using the webcam still. And it's not bad, don't get me wrong, but I would like to have some better stuff. Is anyone playing Mercs Recon? I have the Kickstarter in boxes. Hey, family of gamers 777, how you doing? I don't know one guy out of Milwaukee, I think, that has it and likes it. And I know they used to play Mercs, like regular Mercs, more down in Milwaukee. I've played a little bit, and I own some Mercs, and I painted them, but I never had anybody up here to play with. I do have the 2.0 book. I ended up buying it somewhere. I might have bought it directly from their website because I couldn't find it anyplace else. Like, there was no stores around that had it, sadly, because it was so late. I kind of just wanted it, though, so... Conspiracy Marine says, Adam, is Kill Team worth it for terrain and core manual only? Like, if you mean the big box, I would say yeah. Like, the terrain is awesome. You're going to pay, what, $130 for a $40 book. So now you've got $90 left. You're going to get all that terrain, which for $90 is a pretty good deal. Plus, you're also going to get Adeptus Mechanicus, like 10 guys that can either be built as Rangers or Vanguard. And you're also going to get, what's his name there? Cultists. Genestealer Cultists. Could not think of the word for my... Anyway, and so if you don't like the Genestealer Cultist and you don't like the AdMech, you could probably flip those on eBay or sell them to a friend or whatever and get your money back that way. But yeah, that $130 is, I think, a pretty good deal. Now, if you don't like... Because here's the deal. Like, if you wanted to buy that amount of terrain, I don't know that you could do it for $90. They released the terrain separately as well. There's a $100 box. a $75 box, a $50 box, and like a $35 box. They've got 4 different potential boxes. And I haven't sat down and compared sprues, but I will bet you that the $100 box has got not quite as... The $100 box has the benefit of it has these 2 big cool statues. It's like a big giant space marine kind of like holding a sword or something, and then the other one is like the same sort of thing, but it's got like a skull helmet kind of looking thing. It's pretty cool. So if you just took those 2 pieces out of that $100 box, I bet you that the terrain that is in the Kill Team big starter box is more than that $100. So yeah, I think it's a good deal. James C says, grab a USB adapter kit that comes with something like 6 different sized ends. So it's not a USB issue, it's HDMI. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not that I was looking for micro versus mini USB. I may have misspoke. I was looking for micro versus mini HDMI because the camera goes HDMI out, but it goes out. The HDMI out of the camera is micro HDMI, not mini HDMI, and then it needs to go into regular HDMI into the Elgato Camlink stick, and then that stick goes into USB 3.0, and then your computer thinks that your big camera is a webcam. Is the in theory is what's supposed to happen. So yeah, but Brian Griffith says we'll be able to see Nick Raimondo in shocking detail, potentially, very potentially. Actually, hopefully, very soon you're going to see Nick Raimondo in T-shirt detail. So that's coming. Just an FYI. Eric Brown says, do you think future gangers of Necromunda are on hold? Well, at this point, they've produced, is it 5 or 6 different gangs? Because you've got Goliath, Eschers, Vansar, and the other ones. Shoot, I can't think of their names. They're mostly a lot of cloaks. Anyway, let's say if it's 5 or 6, I don't know. I don't know if they would go beyond that. I mean, if so, it might become a situation where that stuff gets shifted to Forge World. I mean, they've already shifted some of the stuff to Forge World, like some of the special kind of add-on crazy bits and stuff like that are Forge World only for Necromunda. So there's a potential, but I don't know. That's a good question. Let's see here. What else? We've got no product fatigue until after new plastic aspect warriors. Well, that's yes. Okay, I can see that. Dylan says, oh, that was a response to somebody else. Sorry. Jamie asks, do you ever shy away from a game out of fear that it will not make it and you will be stuck with a bunch of minis and books for a dead game system like Void, Mercs, GW's Epic, and Battlefleet Gothic? No. The reason being is that, especially if it's like a skirmish game, for me at least, if I buy even just 2 forces, this is one of the things that I thought Mercs was awesome about. You would buy a army box. The earlier army boxes were a bit more expensive. They were like $70, but you got like 6 or 7 guys, I think. Maybe as many as 8, generally. Depends on the army. But you got X amount of guys in the box for like $75. You can only play Mercs with 5 models. There's no list building like where you're like, oh, I've got this many points left. You just basically pick 5 models. And I don't think you can have any duplicates. Or maybe you can. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think so. But you basically just, of the X amount of models they might have for a specific faction, you pick 5, that's your army when you play. Done. That's it. So that was really smart. And so for $70, you could get, you'd be ready to go. And you buy the book, and that's pretty much all you need. Some 10-siders, and that's about it. So the upside was if you bought like a couple of those boxes and you had the book and you were good from now on, like that the world could end and you could be in your bunker underground and keep playing Mercs because you just had those 2 forces, and there you go. It's fine. Now, bigger things where I'm going to build my own army and it's a big project, those, if I look at it and it's like a big army game, and I'm not 100% sure it's necessarily going to fire off or be popular, that will make me shy away, admittedly. But for smaller skirmish-style games, or games where you can buy like a starter box where it comes with both sides in one box, like Wreckage is about to be releasing a 2-player starter box soon. And so you'll be able to buy a single box and have 2 forces right there and all the stuff that you need, and it'll be great. So I always, like, I have no problem doing that because I know even if everything goes to crap, I still at least have 2 forces, so me and another person can play and it can be fun. But I will agree that if it's if you need to have 70 models to fill out your giant whatever force, and you don't think that game is going to last real long, that will certainly put me off. Now, if I just think that some of the models are super cool, I might buy some of the models, just use them for other stuff, or just use them to paint for fun or whatever. That's fine too. But yeah, definitely. Orlocks. I forgot the Orlocks. That was the name that I was trying to think of. 01 Horns fan says, can you give a Cliff Notes version of the relationship between Forge World and GW for those of us kind of new to the scene? I don't know the intricacies of the relationship between the two. I don't know the history of Forge World super well. I do know that Forge World at this point, I believe, is I think a wholly owned subsidiary, but I'm not sure on that. But they're basically owned by GW, but they are a separate kind of entity. Like it's, and Forge World is pouring molds in the UK, and it's all resin stuff very frequently, unless it's like little small parts like shoulder pads or junk like that. If it's a bigger kit, they will usually pour it when you order it. Like you go, hey, I want to buy this Titan or whatever. And then they're like, okay, cool. And they go grab all the molds and they pour it for you and they ship it to you. So they're not sitting on a bunch of them because, you know, that's problematic. And those things are expensive. But like the smaller bits, like, you know, add-on shoulder pads or whatever. Like years ago, I bought add-on Death Guard shoulder pads that were super cool looking. And I bought some torsos that you would use to replace, I think, Terminator torsos. Yeah, and they were pretty cool too, and also heads. So little bits like that they probably crank out more frequently, but the smaller stuff. So yeah, Forge World is basically, I believe, owned by GW. I could be wrong by that, but I think that they're a wholly owned subsidiary, but they are technically separate. And Forge World stuff is non-standard. Like if you buy a codex for whatever army, you will generally not find Forge World stuff in there. The Forge World stuff usually has its own rules that usually you get from Forge World, I think. Again, like I said, I've never bought anything fully, like I've never bought like a super cool tank made by Forge World. I've only ever bought bits from them, little add-on kind of embellishments. But if you want to be able to use Forge World like in a tournament or whatever, the tournament organizers have to say whether Forge World's okay. Sometimes they'll say certain things are okay, but certain things aren't. It totally depends. But yeah, Forge World is for advanced modelers also, by the way, because it's all resin. Sometimes that stuff is a little warped. You got to heat it up and bend it back into true. There's a lot of sanding you have to do. There's lots of shenanigans that way. So it's not, I would not go into Forge World if you've just started in the hobby. I would definitely want to wait on that. Leslie Schaefer says, what 2 forces for the new Wreck Age starter? I don't know. I know that they're packaging them now, but I don't know. It'll be coming eventually. It's very soon, and I'll probably talk about it at some point because, well, yeah, I probably will, just because I'm looking forward to it. Brian Griffith says, the Forge World operates out of the exact same offices as the main GW. The designers sit right next to each other. I think that is, I'm pretty sure that's true now. I don't disagree. I think that initially that wasn't the case, though. I think that they were a little bit more separate, but yeah. Raphael says, have you tried Green Stuff World's chameleon paints? I have not yet. I'm looking forward actually to getting, I have received some paints from a company called Turbo Dork, and they make a bunch of like color shift kind of chameleon-y type paints too. I want to try some of those out. I have not ever come across Green Stuff World's paints like at a store or anything like that. I did, however, pick up at Nova Open. There was a vendor that was selling a bunch of different stuff, and he did have some of the rollers. They're like a clear lucite or acrylic or whatever plastic that has texture built into them. So then you take some green stuff and you put it on your base, and you roll this thing across it, and now your base looks like it's cobblestone or like diamond plate, kind of like, you know, steel or whatever like that. And so those are, I picked up some of those at Nova, but I haven't actually ever seen their stuff in person anywhere. Green Stuff World, I think, is out of Spain? Question mark? Somewhere over there in Europe. So that's maybe one of the reasons why I don't see the stuff over here too much. But yeah. Steve Keen says that Forge World are like the fancy boutique department of Games Workshop, but you pay more for inferior products. Well, I don't know if they're inferior. I think it's just the material lends itself more sometimes to warpage and things like that, and how they get shipped or whatever and that kind of stuff. They're amazing looking products, but they do take a good deal more work to put together. Certainly, yeah. Where are we at? Okay, about 10 more minutes. Adam, are there any new games/sets you're excited for, and why? First time catching you live, so hello from Chippenham. Well, thanks, Wes. Are there any new upcoming games or sets that I'm really I'm looking forward to my Hellboy game. Definitely looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the new 2-player starter for Wreckage. Otherwise, there's not anything right now that I know of coming down the pike, as it were. Or is it pipe? Well, anyway, I don't know of anything that I'm thinking of right now that I can be like, oh man, I can't wait till that gets released. There's nothing in wargaming right now that I'm thinking of. Like, yeah, not that I can think of, no. I am looking forward to... Yeah, I can't really think of anything. I mean, there's lots of stuff out there. There's stuff that I haven't bought yet. There's stuff that I've been like, yeah, that's interesting and I want that, but I haven't pulled the trigger yet. Mostly terrain type stuff. I did get the new Realm of Battle board that GW put out, the like Sector Imperialis or Sector Mechanicus or whatever. It's like the big 4 foot by 6 foot plastic. You know, they're 2 foot by 2 foot squares, and they're all like 3-dimensional and all that kind of jazz. I picked those up. I ordered them from my local game shop, and I got those. And I'm hoping to get those primed before it gets real crappy out, and then paint them over the course of the winter, hopefully. But yeah, that's pretty much about it right now. I'm just looking forward to getting some Battle Report stuff done on the channel, doing some other stuff, kind of expanding things in the channel a bit. But as far as actual new games right now, I haven't really kicked around the idea of anything new that I'm really super excited looking for. A lot of stuff they don't like publish like way ahead of time. I mean, GW is better than they used to be, and a lot of other companies will tell you about stuff maybe a couple of months out, but like big new things they don't tell you like way out in advance generally, because a lot of times they're waiting for it to make sure it's back in country as it gets back from, say, China or wherever. Yeah. Brian Griffith says Finecast and Forge World resin are 2 different materials. That is very true. I feel like Finecast is a much more porous material. If you look at a piece of Finecast next to a piece of Forge World resin, the Forge World resin seems to be kind of glossier and a bit shinier, so it's less porous, just for lack of a better term. But yeah, definitely. What else we've got? Adam, any interest in the other side? You could get an army of fishmen. I know. I've looked at the fishmen. No, I know. So the other side is like Malifaux. It's made by Weird, and it's in the Malifaux universe, but it's more of an army-based game. There are a lot of like larger models, you know, like big size models, and then you have smaller groups of like regular troops. That rhymed. And you put them on. They don't move. You have like these circle bases, so you put like 3 guys on a circle base and you move them together like as a squad. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of different because you know, other games have done obviously that more rank and flank style where you're moving a rectangle, but this is a circle. So it's kind of interesting that way. And then they have these bigger models and stuff like that. And I've looked at it. It's still, is it finally released? I don't even know if it was. I last talked to people from Weird at either Gen Con or not Adepticon. Either Gen Con or Origins. I know I talked to somebody, a guy that I know there. I talked to him at Origins. I don't remember if I also talked to him at Gen Con, because Gen Con was afterwards. But in theory, the other side stuff is probably coming out very soon, I hope. So yeah, we'll see. I did buy some of the buildings, which they're coming out with for... Technically, you can use them for Malifaux or for the other side, and they're plastic. And I bought a couple of those because I thought they were cool. And I'm going to probably put those together and build them. They actually don't take a lot to build, or a lot to put together. And they're very modular, too, so that's kind of neat. You can like take the top floor off of one and put it on the other and switch them around and switch the roofs around. And they're all different enough and kind of like not esoteric. They're eclectic, and so the designs, like if you take the roof off of this one and put it on that one, it doesn't look weird, you know, because they all look weird in general. So swapping stuff around just works. It's neat. It's neat looking terrain. It's all hard plastic and stuff and molded. Have you heard about Gaslands from Osprey Games? It's a budget post-apocalyptic car skirmish game played with kit-bashed Hot Wheels. I have totally heard of it, yes. I own a copy of it. The Noob Painter, who is a viewer on the show and a patron, he came up from Texas last year to the Tabletop Minions Expo, and he ran it there. And I had played it previously, but he ran it and had a great time. We all had a great time. I've bought a bunch of Matchbox cars. There's one right there. 50 anniversary, whatever. So I'm going to put a bunch of guns on it and schlock it up. But yeah, me and some of the guys at work are definitely interested, and we've been buying cars and stuff like that. So yeah, Gaslands is amazing. It's an inexpensive book. It's like $20, but it's got all the rules you need. You get to take a bunch of Matchbox cars and modify them and drive them around and shoot each other and race, and it's awesome. It's a really super great game. So yeah, definitely. Boop boop badoo. Let's see here. Where I was gonna. Somebody else asked a question and I forget what it was now. I don't know. What else have we got? Getting right towards the end. Other side was how I tempted the girlfriend into hobby gaming, but the production timeline caused us to cancel our order and go with Age of Sigmar instead. It did take forever until they finally got there. I mean, yeah, I thought that was interesting. Yeah, it's taken a long time for them to get to where they're going. Nicholas says, have you thought about going to Mini Wargaming and doing a battle report closer to when you start doing your own and try to promote battle reports from your channel? Well, I technically have already done one battle report. A couple of months back, I did one for Wreckage. And I've got a second one in the can, as it were. And by in the can, I mean, that's an old film term. But anyway, I've got a second one done. Well, not done. It's filmed. We filmed it the same day. But the audio is goofy. I've mentioned this a couple of times. I have to go do a bunch of shenanigans to make the audio work, which I had to do in the first one too, but the first one was only like 17, 18 minutes, so it was a lot easier. This next one is like 35, 36 minutes, so it'll take some more time. Have I thought about going to GW? Have I thought about going to Tabletop Mini Wargaming and doing a bat rep from there or something? Yes, I've kicked around the idea. I would need to get a passport and all that jazz. So yeah, but I've looked at like, oh, I could fly into Buffalo and then like rent a car and drive across, you know, or something like that. Kicking around the idea potentially. Yeah, I would love to. Maybe like once they get their bunker like set up, like the new place and stuff like that. Maybe I could do one there. I talked with Dave, not this year at Valhalla, but last year at Valhalla, about they would like to have like an event sometime after their new bunker gets built or finished and all that stuff. It's built. It's a building already. But they would like to maybe have some sort of like YouTuber kind of a thing and try to see if they could get a bunch of YouTubers to show up and whatever. So that's a potential thing. Might do something like that. But yeah, they're cool guys. So I would dig that. VJ Morph says, I'm going to Mini Wargaming and the same trip as I'm coming to TMX. Oh, that's what I was going to talk about. Tabletop Minions Expo 2019. I don't have the title card here with it, so it's not going to work. But on Friday, this past Friday, I finally got confirmation from my contact at the facility. Tabletop Minions Expo is a tiny little convention. I've run 2 of them in the past. This upcoming year, 2019, will be the 3rd year. And it's done at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh here in town. Because it's done in June, the maintenance people do this thing where they like turn off all of the steam on the entire campus for a certain amount of time, so then there's no hot water and there's some issues and blah blah. It's called steam shutdown, and it's a maintenance thing. And my contact wanted to make complete sure that steam shutdown did not happen during TMX, because then people who would come and stay on campus, because there's dorm rooms, you can stay in the dorm rooms for super cheap. It's like $40 a night. But if there's no hot water, nobody likes that. So we finally got maintenance nailed down, and they're like, because it's like, you know, it's 8 months away or whatever, and maintenance is like, well, I don't know. So they finally were like, look, this is what needs to be done. So they're like, okay. Anyway, June 7th and 8th. Nope, back up. No, June 8th and 9th. I'm going to make a graphic eventually. June 8th and 9th, 2019, Tabletop Minions Expo here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh campus in the Grunhagen Conference Center. I'll have a whole thing, and I'll make an announcement. I'll change the website. I'll do all kinds of cool stuff. It'll be great. So it's a small little convention. Last year we had like 65 folks, and it's pretty much, and I call it an expo because there's no tournaments, there's none of that stuff. It's pretty much show up and learn new games. Some of them are games you've maybe never played before. Some of them are homebrew, all that kind of stuff. But it's coming up soon. I'll have more information on the website, and I'll have more information here and all that kind of jazz. But the date has now been verified. June 8th and 9th, 2019, coming up. Like I said, in about 8 months. So, anyway, that's pretty much about it. It's 11 o'clock my time, so I've got to... Did I feed the cats? I did feed the cats. So I've got to do other stuff, and then got lunch and a bunch of other jazz I got to get done today. I'm going to do a bunch of painting, hopefully, this afternoon. I'm looking forward to that. I was doing a bunch of errands yesterday and did not get painting done. So, yeah, looking forward to that. So thanks again for coming and talking, and remember that if you feel fatigued about new releases that are coming out, you can choose not to buy them. Some of them. If you want to buy the ones you want, maybe, or if it's like limited edition or whatever, limited edition. But if it's limited edition, you can sometimes wait like a year, and then it won't be nearly as expensive. So there's that too. Take all this with a grain of salt. Anyway, I appreciate everybody coming and watching and hanging out and chatting. I'm always very glad to see people chatting back and forth to each other in the comments, and I hope some of you have made friends with people in the comments and that kind of stuff, and I think that's cool. I really enjoy the community, here with the whole thing that's attached to the channel. I appreciate it. So anyway, I'll see you again in 2 weeks at the next Every Other Sunday show, and thanks for watching, and keep hobbying.